The mic is on. Hello. Oh, there we go. Good morning. Whoa. We have with us this morning some special guests. Actually, before we introduce them, let's have a word of prayer and then we'll get into everything. Father, thank you for this time together. We pray that just as we talk about specifically missions in Japan and what's going on there and the need of the gospel, that you would work in our lives, that the Spirit would move in our hearts, and that you would just open our eyes to the need and just lead us as you see fit. In Christ's name, amen. So I have all the way from Japan some friends of ours, Herro and Sarah Sawane. They're here visiting. She's from Alabama, so they'll be going to Alabama next week to see her family. And Herro is, he lived in the States for a little over 10 years, so he's very familiar with American culture and Western culture, and he went back to Japan, about 14 years ago, I think he said. And we also have another guest, Dacia Bostrom, who is a friend of Herro's, and she grew up in Japan. Her family's still over there. She's just been in the States for a couple of years, I think, right? So they all may have a little something to add. So Herro, if you go ahead and come up. The primary purpose, the things that we really want to talk about specifically are just kind of exposing the needs of the gospel, the state of the gospel in Japan, and the needs and the fact that it's an unreached people group, and just how little gospel there is, and also what God is doing there, on the other side, just to kind of see that God is actually moving, and Herro obviously will know a lot about this, so feel free to ask any questions, about Japan or what, that's related that you feel like, even if it's not necessarily spiritual, please feel free to ask. But we definitely want to highlight the spiritual aspects of what's going on in Japan. So go ahead, Herro.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, my name is Herro, and I came from Japan. And first off, I'd like to thank you all for giving us an opportunity to talk about Japan. It's something that I'm passionate about. Anyway, Japan, I'm pretty sure you guys don't know much about Japan. It's a little island state near Korea and China. And there are about 127 million people living there. Actually, a lot of American friends in Colorado have told me that they thought that Japan was just one of the states of China, but it's not. So it's an independent nation. And so the reason that I like to talk about Japan is because they desperately need the gospel, and they need more people to who share the gospel with the local people in Japan. So the state of the things right now, it's a beautiful nation, but behind that, surface, like how it looks from outside, there's a lot of desperate needs, and there's a lot of issues and challenges in the country. And some of the highlights would be, it's basically a society of no hope, because most people haven't even heard of the gospel. They don't even know who Jesus Christ is. And sometimes, I've met somebody who didn't understand what heaven and hell was, and sin, and the concept of sin, and all those things. Not everybody. Some people know the concept, but not. Most people, I'd say, they're not really familiar with those things, and they kind of have a vague understanding of a spiritual world. Most people are considered to be Buddhist, but they really don't. Most people are basically just kind of living life, and the Buddhism and Shintoism is very common, but it's basically just a part of the traditions and culture. So they don't really have a lot of hope. And that really shows up in the statistics. Like suicide rate is really high. There's a bunch of young people, what we call hikikomori. Basically means that some kids are just so overwhelmed with the social pressure and just the expectation put on them, and so what they do is to sometimes, it just became too much, and they would just go, inside the house and never come out. The suicide rate is pretty high. Last few years, I think it went down a little bit, but I've heard that it's still close to 30,000 a year. People just commit suicide, and especially since 2011, we had a massive earthquake, and we've had a lot of people just became so hopeless and committed suicide. And I think that year, 35,000 people died. Well, outside of that disaster, those people just committed suicide because they just lost hope, completely lost hope. And also, there's a lot of oppression in terms of lifestyle. The workaholism is really common. So a lot of people wouldn't come home until 10, 11 at night, and they'll just take off to work, next morning at 6, 7 o'clock. So the families, the kids grow up without a father, basically, even though it's not like they're divorced or anything like that. It's just the father is just working, and they're tied to work-related commitment. And going back to the hikikomori thing, it is said that 700,000 people, young people, are basically hikikomori. Basically, they just stay indoor, never come out, and their parents are taking care of these young people. And actually, more than that, 1.5 million young people, mostly men, are in hikikomori and have completely withdrawn from society. So we definitely have a bunch of young people just not knowing what to do with their life. And now, so you might think, so what are churches doing in Japan? And there are many churches in Japan. Like, for example, our city have 800,000 people living in the city called Hamamatsu City. And they probably have 10, 15 different churches, including all denominations, but most of them are unable to self-replicate. What I mean by that is that they're not sharing the gospel. They don't know how to share the gospel. And most churches are filled with elderly people because young people are not coming. And most of the churches out there, they have, I don't know, maybe 15 to 30 people attending the church every week. And there's definitely not a mega church or anything like that. Well, except maybe in Tokyo, I think there's a couple of big churches. But when I say big in Japan, you're talking about maybe a couple of hundreds people at the most. I've never seen any 1,000 people, 2,000 people attending the church in Japan, unless it's a conference or something like that. In terms of a population, Christians are like maybe 0. Depending on how there are many statistics out there. It's hard to know which one is correct, but I'd say 0.1% or maybe less than that is really Christians. My note says 0.22%, or 1 in 4,000 to 5,000 people under age of 30 are evangelical Christians, but I'd say it might be a little less. It's to a point where, I have friends all over the place, basically just Tokyo, Osaka, and all these missionaries and the Christian friends, and a lot of times, we have mutual friends, or somebody that we know. Both of us know. If I went to Tokyo, for example, and then saw somebody, hey, do you know this guy? And people often know that. There aren't that many of us out there. So we definitely don't have many teachers, Bible teachers or preachers who are really trained in a systematic way. not all of them. I like to say that some people are really experienced and trained, and they're trying their best, but then there aren't that many of them. And some people would start a church without much support or training at all. So sometimes what happens is that some churches they're just kind of doing a trial and error kind of thing, and preachers are just struggling all by themselves and not really having any support. But they're faithful people, but they can't do everything, and there aren't enough of them out there. So and on top of that, there's a lot of cultural stuff going on, even in the church, affecting all of us. And it's a culture of sin is rampant, and it's more tolerated in a way. So I'm not going to go to any specifics, but many things that you might go, whoa, this is not good, and it's kind of out there, and then people are exposed to it. And so, but that doesn't mean that it's completely hopeless and that we couldn't do anything about it either. In fact, there's a lot of good things happening. Just one example I'd like to mention is there's something that I personally experienced in the past few months is just a small group in our church. We go to this church named All Nations Fellowship. It's a bilingual church, and a lot of missionaries and international people are there. But we have an English small group and a Japanese small group, and then we happen to go to the Japanese group one weekend and found out that there's a lot going on. And this couple, Korean American guy, one of our elders, and his wife have been leading this group for like 10 years now, and they're finally starting to see fruit in such a dramatic way. And there's usually sort of a stereotypical view of how Japanese people typically respond to the gospel, which is not usually very positive. Like a lot of people, the way they respond sometimes is that, well, yeah, it's interesting, but that's your truth, and I have my belief, and I have a social obligation that I need to hang on to. So I really can't be a Christian, even though I think it's good. It makes sense, and I wish I could be a Christian, but I'm a Japanese, so I'm bound to it. That's sort of one of the typical responses that at least I personally have seen quite a bit. But the day that Sarah and I attended this Japanese group, just completely destroyed all the stereotypes that I had in my head, because these are the people, basically just fits in that category of Japanese people. Just never seen that many foreigners. Never been outside of the country. They grew up in Japan, and they work like everybody else. But these people just were showing up to the group, just asking all these really good questions. Like even somebody like us, being Christian for many years, like, whoa, they ask really good questions, and they're really you can tell that they're really wanting to know the answer to the question of life, and the people are getting saved and getting baptized in our church, even though it's not like 15 people every weekend or anything like that. It's a very slow and gradual process, and it requires a lot of patience and a lot of foreign missionaries and American missionaries that they've been there for many years. They struggle through all these situations, but we're starting to see, at least what I can see in our church, that definitely just I can definitely see there's something really good going on, and very unusual, and I can definitely say that God is doing something there. And when you see people realizing that their sinful nature, and I need to repent, I need to put trust in Jesus, and they're actually saying that and asking all these questions about how do I get closer to God, and how do I get to know God better, and how do I understand the Bible? What about this? What about that? And all these questions that thrown out in the meeting, I was really encouraged. And the first time that I was there, but again, there's not enough people in that group either. So what happened was that I was, Sarah and I invited to that group, even though we weren't exactly planning to be there, because I'm a bilingual guy, and they know that I know a thing or two about the Bible, and they don't have enough people just being able to explain and answer some of these questions. Sometimes Paul, by the way, he's the guy, one of the elders leading the group, and sometimes he has to just take off and then go to the second location. We have 2 services, and this group actually meets after the morning service, and sometimes he has to take off, and then just a bunch of lay people left in the group, and so so that's one of the reasons that one weekend we got invited to that group, and so then I'm not elders or anything like that, but they're like, yeah, Herro-san, please just to lead this question ahead. Can you answer this question? And so I had to do that, but I gladly did it, but it definitely just left me with the impression that, yeah, we don't have enough people, and we need to raise more leaders, we need to disciple more people, we need to have more people in general, and not just the people, but also Christians who can actually share the gospel with these newborn Christians, and so hungry, and so my prayer is that there will be more people raised, all over the world, and in America in particular, and more people will be interested in, coming to Japan, and I've been really encouraged to see the Malones really pursuing this path, and it's not for everybody, and I'm not saying that everybody should come to Japan or anything like that, but if you don't mind, I'd like to ask all of you guys to just pray for us, and pray for Japan, and pray for those who are already in the field laboring for the kingdom, that they'll get the support they need, and they'll be able to have more opportunities to share the gospel, and it's a tough field, but the field is ripe. People are changing, and the social climate is changing, and more people are kind of questioning the status quo, and starting to realize that they're not very happy. They're very. Some of them are really concerned about the future. Actually, many people are concerned about the future, but they don't really have any answers to the questions of life, and so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any questions? Anyone have any questions?
Welcome.
Thank you.
My question is, I'm trying to get a better understanding of why Korea embraced the gospel after the Korean War, and now is the second largest missionary sending country in the world. China has embraced the gospel, many house churches, many churches. What is it about the Japanese culture as distinct from the Filipino, the Korean, the Chinese that has the gospel not penetrated? I know that's a difficult question, but I'm sure you have some thoughts.
I think that's an excellent question, and it's the question I actually asked myself, and I don't know if I have a clear cut answer to that question, but I'd say one thing that I noticed about Japan, and of course, I was born and I'm 100% Japanese. I grew up there, and just looking back, the days that the days before I became a Christian, and I lived there, and I think there's a stronger sense of a national pride in a really strange way. they have this concept that Japanese people are special and it's just really different from everybody else. And you see that among people who are here actually, like, for example, Japanese international students living in the States studying, and they tend to create this little village of people. And they tend to congregate, and they tend to be more aware of who they are in terms of like culture and just the Japanese as their identity. They don't always do that when they live in Japan, but they go outside and they tend to feel that, or I guess they tend to emphasize on that aspect of themselves. And there's a lot of debate, if you look through the news articles, and Americans are doing this and asking the Japanese government to do this and that, and then a lot of reactions have been that, well, Japan is different, and they don't understand Japan. Japan is, has a long history. They don't understand. It's like a West versus us kind of thing, or Japan versus the rest of the world. So I think that might have a lot to do with it. It's not that Chinese people and Korean people don't have any national pride or anything like that, but I think it's just something different about the way Japanese people think of themselves, at least in my observation. But what do you think?
They used to be closed off, right? Like they wouldn't even let anybody in.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they say they don't really believe anything, they still go to the temple. They do their tradition. Even your parents.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm not an expert and I'm not Japanese, but I mean, even Herro's parents seemed like interested in Christianity, almost like they wanted to be a Christian, but we still have to do the temple stuff. Where our ancestors are buried there. It's like there's this real sense of tradition. I mean, I think it's a spiritual stronghold that nobody knows about. It's very hidden, so it's probably like the worst kind. And they probably don't even realize they're under a stronghold. I mean.
Actually, you reminded me of something. Another thing that I can think of is that Japan used to be a little bit different before, I'd say 1600. There were many shogun kings who are very, very progressive. They're very interested in outside world, the world outside Japan, and they try to incorporate a lot of stuff from the Europe and all that. But then when Edo era came, or actually Toyotomi era came, and then one of the first thing that these two kings did was to eliminate religions, Christianity in particular, and then I guess I might need to explain a little bit of the Japanese history. Well, back in the late 1500, the whole nation just went into the era where a bunch of shogun kings were everywhere. They tried to rule the entire nation, unite the entire nation again, and everybody just fought with everybody. It's like state of Oklahoma had its own king, and then they would be fighting with the state of Nebraska or something like that. It was like that from late 1500 to early 1600, and then Tokugawa era came back in 1603. Is the time that the year that the Tokugawa, Ieyasu Tokugawa is the name of really historic figure. He's the shogun king who finally united Japan, and he established this system where it's like a group based society where each village has a unit of 8, and one person mess up something, all 8 people in that village, like the group of people, are punished no matter what. So that went on for about 350 years. That pretty much shaped the mentality and the culture of Japan today. So what happens is that a lot of times, people are not sometimes people are very hesitant of becoming a Christian because they feel like they are going to get themselves in trouble by betraying the tradition, and then for us to become a Christian means that it's going to go against the family tradition, even though the family tradition is not anything like, they have this strong faith in, tradition or anything like. It's just the way things are supposed to be, the way you're supposed to do things. And I think that the motivation, drive came from the fact that they feel like they're obligated to not break the unity in the society and harmony in society. So I think that keeps the people, Japanese people, besides all the national pride stuff, I think that's another factors that keeps Japanese people from becoming Christian. It's such a foreign concept to them that a lot of people are hesitant of it. And I think that's one of the reasons that they will say stuff like, that's great, it makes sense, it's wonderful, it's your faith, but it cannot be mine because I'm obligated to stick to this. So my case, I'm an eccentric child in that family, and when I became a Christian, I lived in Colorado for many years, and I became a Christian there. And because my parents were kind of untraditional in the sense that they encouraged me to just get out of the country and just really just live the way I think I should live. And I didn't grow up with this concept that, I'm a part of the Sawane family. Technically, my family have been in the same location for the past 400 years, and I'm the 10th or 11th generation of Sawane. And I'm the only child, I'm the firstborn male. So traditionally, in a traditional sense, I'm supposed to do those things, but I completely disregarded it, and without no hesitations, just in my personality and my upbringing. So when I got saved and I became a Christian, I decided to get baptized right away. It wasn't anything, I need to wait until I understand things. I was like, let's do it, man. And I called my mom and, hey mom, by the way, I became a Christian, I'm gonna get baptized next week. And she started sobbing over the phone because she thought that I got involved in a cult. But I was like that, so thankfully my family understood that, and they've actually been pretty impressed with the, just a lot of things that's in the Bible, and what we tell them. They're very interested. They're not Christians yet, but they read a couple of books, and they told us about it, and we always have discussions about my faith and Sarah's faith, and so it's unusual, but I've heard of many people, Japanese people, who would be persecuted in a family, and especially back in old days. And I have a friend who is retired now, but he became a Christian in a really rural area of Japan where things are very traditional. He said that he talked to his father, and then basically he was disowned, and he was told that you need to sign this paperwork, and you need to sign this document that states that you're going to give up all the rights to inherit any properties or anything like that that family owned in the future, and then you're not to talk to us anymore. But a few years later, he was forgiven, and now they're just living like having a normal relationship. But he had a hard time. But he's one of those people who did that back in old days when things are not quite as open-minded as it is now. So I have a lot of respect for him. But anyway, yeah. So did that answer your question? Yeah. There could be some other reasons too, but.
Any other? Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. Anyone else have any more questions? Sorry, we'll get John next. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. I kind of understand what you mean with as far as maybe traditions and all that, because I'm Creek and Cherokee Indian, so I can somewhat. I've never been out of the country, so I can't completely I relate. But I can kind of see where you're coming from. You know, it's hard to, you know, when you have a tradition and all that and heritage. Because if I try to witness to people in my family or other Indians, we come at it with the view as, well, it's a white man's religion. And, you know, I've heard that quite a bit, even from people in my own family. So I think I can kind of understand that plays a part too. But maybe I was thinking, you know, I think when we were talking about in the time of the shoguns, you know, when you had all the different warlords and all that, is my understanding that I think that some Roman Catholic missionaries might have came in at that time. Do you think maybe something that plays a part in it? And I think we have the same problem here in America, where if you say you're a Christian, maybe they get the idea of maybe Roman Catholicism or Mormon, or maybe they automatically think a televangelist. Oh, well, you're a Christian, you're just out to make money or something. So they had this, you know, this idea of what a Christian already is. Do you kind of think that's a battle too, where you might have to witness to them and kind of explain the gospel to them a little more? Do you think that could be an issue as well?
I'd say yes. We have a lot of cult issues in Japan, and people get ripped off, and you know, a lot of times, you know, it's a Buddhism related, and sometimes it's just a new age cult thing that happened. And there's a terrorism happened maybe 20 years ago, and there's a cult group that was really active at the time, and they did something really bad, and so I think, you know, that those incidents really left a really bad taste in the mouth, and so yeah, if you push that this is a religion, not like a faith, a personal faith in the truth, and people tend to go, whoa, you know, I don't know whether they think much about whether it's something is a Roman Catholic or Protestant or all that. I think it's just mostly, you know, whether something is a legit faith and religion or cult, you know, just wanting to get you into this cult group and then take you away from your family or something like that. So some people are afraid of that, yes. So also people, in general, people are not very used to talking about life and death and, you know, where do we go after we die, and it's not something that they have given much thought. So the life is just sort of a series of obligation, and you know, just you just have to do the right thing and live the best life possible, and yeah, and as part of that might have to do with, oh, you know, I've seen some cult people and they do crazy things, and I don't want to have any part of it. So yeah, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
I guess I've always kind of thought that Japan was dominated by Buddhism or Shintoism, that sort of thing. Am I understanding correctly that it's more secular in actual practice? Is it more of a secular state than a religious state type of?
I'd say yes. It's more about tradition. Secular. I don't think it's secular in a way that they're atheist. You know, most people are agnostic. I'd say they have this vague sense that, yeah, there might be something out there, but it's not anything that I take too seriously, maybe. And most Buddhist religions and Shintoism, it's all just a tradition, and it's their job. So I don't think many Buddhist priests in Japan, they actually believe what they preach, or if they preach at all. So it's Buddhism is in some ways just a funeral business. So they do stuff only if somebody die, and you know, yeah, so it's all business. So it's not anything spiritual, and that's one of the reasons that I've never really bought into that, because, you know, I saw all that, and my parents would, rant about it and they would complain about it. My family happens to be, really old family. So supposedly, all the community, people in the community are registered with the local temple. That's how that's kind of still going on in a rural area. Not so much in big city anymore. But my family supposedly has some kind of a high ranking in a Buddhist temple. So when my grandfather and grandmother died, they will just tell us that, hey, we need to send 7 Buddhist priests to read out the Bible during the funeral. And then that's like $7,000 or $1,000 per person or something like that. And my dad got really angry, and who are you to come to our door and make us, you think you deserve that much money just simply because we lost somebody in our family? And so, but he negotiated down to 3 people. And which is supposedly I was told that was kind of an unusual thing to do. But my dad just wouldn't back down. Like, he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, we just lost our family member, and these people are asking money, $7,000 just because they want to read the same Buddhist Bible that they have no idea what they're reading about. It's not even Japanese language. Like, they just practice how to say things written in a Buddhist Bible, which is like basically. It's like a little, scroll kind of thing, but I don't think they know what they're talking about. But 7 people show up simply because we've been around for many years, and so we talked. Yeah, my dad negotiated down to 3, and then they came, and I remember seeing a long time ago in a different funeral. I remember seeing some Buddhist priest just obviously didn't want to be there. He probably had something else that he would rather do, and so he was like going like this and. They use a little, wooden bell thing to just kind of make noise, and I could tell he was just not very happy being there. And as a child, I remember just looking at him and saying, this is not real at all. Like, these guys are for money. So it is, so I guess it is a secular and a traditional. There's nothing real about it. It's just a job. So.
And biological evolution is taught in the public schools.
That's correct.
As just kind of a matter of fact thing, right?
Yep. I remember hearing all about it in science class, I guess. So.
He's asking if the Buddhists pray.
Probably not. Spin wheels?
They say they chant, but nobody understands.
No, nobody understands it. Yeah, it's not like I've been to that many Buddhist events. The only thing that I've experienced is the funeral. They chant and they read some stuff. Nobody understands, and I don't think Buddhists pray like Christians do.
Light candles. I mean, do they have any part of their tradition? Do they have things that they do to kind of worship?
Yeah, actually, yes. Come to think of it, each family has, my family actually has this too, but they have a part of the house where they keep a little mini shrine or a mini Buddhist. I don't know the word for that in English, but it's like a little shrine. But shrine is Shinto stuff. But funny thing is, they usually have a Buddhist stuff, and usually like some picture of somebody who's passed away, or grandma and grandpa and stuff like that. But then next to it, there's a miniature Shinto shrine, and then they all have different purposes. So culturally, they just try to take all the good, whatever they think is good to their culture. So they don't stick to just one thing. It's not a black and white thing. So. Yeah,
how available is the Bible at public bookstores, things of that nature in Japan?
It's available everywhere. There's usually a little section, it usually says religion, and then the Bibles and the Christian books, and just a few of them. I usually, at least in the big bookstores, and not depending on the size of the store, I guess. But they usually have a Christian books along with other Buddhist books and other things. But it's not a huge selection of books, anything like that. In fact, we don't have that many good Christian books. That's something that I like to kind of get involved. It's translating good study materials and good books, because they don't have that. They don't even have a study Bible as far as I know. There's one study Bible, but that's it. America in some ways really great place to be for that reason, because we have 20, 30 different study Bibles, living Bible, study Bible, and ESV, NS, 5, 6 different translations. We have 3, and mostly, one people use Shinkai-yaku, and I think Shinkyodo-yaku translation is a Catholic related, and then there's another one I think I forgot the name of it, but anyway, but we don't have that many selections of books, but we do have Christian books. They usually do in a bookstore, yes, but not an obvious place.
Good morning, and thank you for being here and sharing
thank
your story with us. My question is, what's your worldview of Japan from, what's your worldview of the Christianity?
What's the worldview of, in general?
Yes.
If you look at the postmodernism in the West, that's pretty close to a Japanese way of thinking. The worldview, I don't know if they even have a worldview sometimes. Most people say, just we're here, and this is what we have, and we don't know everything. We're not going to know everything, and we're okay with that. That sort of attitude, and you might have your truth. That's great, and that's interesting. I'd like to hear more about it. But my truth is this, and this is what I think is true. But other people can have different views, and that might be true too. So, but I remember we're trying to find that out with the young people. The short-term mission team from Colorado came to Japan back in 2011. I remember going to a college campus in my city, and we were talking to 4 young guys hanging out in a dining room, and they got frustrated because we are asking all these questions that they haven't thought of. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Basically just asking about worldview. Like, what do you think about life, and things like that. And one guy, I remember, I could tell that everybody was visibly frustrated with these questions. And then one guy finally spoke up and said, "You know what? You're asking all these questions that I really don't know what to say." And then he went on just telling us how Japanese people are raised to not think about those things, or either that or Japanese people have never been trained to think in that way. Life is just there to live, and you just try to live a good life. Whatever you think is the best and right thing to do. Meet all the social obligations, and that's it. And after we die, who knows and who cares, basically. We don't know, and we cannot know, and we're not going to care about it. We just have to live day by day and then meet social obligation. So this guy was saying that, and so don't torture us with these questions, because we don't know. We really don't know about these things. And so that's their worldview, I think. If there's anything like worldview in their mind, I think that's probably the most common form of worldview.
So no real seeking of truth,
Not
really
usually.
caring what's actually true, just kind of live your life and.
That's right. But
whatever.
then people who actually do think about those things end up getting depressed, and then here comes hikikomori, because they can't adjust it. Like, they cannot live. In some way, they're probably closer to knowing the truth, because they notice that the relationship and all the meaning of life and all that, they cannot get themselves into that kind of a thinking. And then they feel pressure and they get overwhelmed, and then here comes hikikomori. Well, I'm just not going to talk to anybody. And life is dark, So anything to add from your perspective?
Well, we both have stories.
Yeah.
I'm not a very long conversation. You want me to tell? Yeah, I actually met Herro in Japan. I went there before I met him. And I just kind of felt the draw to go to Japan. It was kind of weird, but I just knew I was supposed to go. And I became an English teacher full time. I was teaching mostly adults, which I think is an awesome way to go, because I was teaching like these company guys after work. Maybe they're going to travel or something. And so you could just talk about everything. And so I learned a lot about them, I think, that way. Yeah, and seems to me they don't really know exactly what they believe. They might not care that much, but they're interested. And they kind of like, I think they kind of like American Westerners. So you have a kind of like opportunity to talk to them, and especially if you're a teacher, sensei. So they like listen to you, and they're like, oh, so you can like tell them whatever you want, and they'll probably want to come to your house, and like maybe have a house party. They don't do that very often themselves, but like they might be interested. I think that'd be a good opportunity, like the Malones maybe can invite people to their house, and possibly reach people that way. Because, I think they kind of think Westerners are special, and a lot of people are interested in English. So, you can make friends that way. And so I had a really good experience. But I thought it was so sad because I learned that all these people just don't really believe anything, but like he said, they're just tied to their tradition and they're tied to their work. And it's a group mentality. So even if they don't have to stay at work, they do because everybody else is staying at work. And they can't leave because other people didn't leave. So it's just like, and they don't like talk about their family. They don't really get personal. So like I wouldn't even know that they had a wife and a kid, unless I asked. And I'm like, oh, bring them to, our like, I had maybe a party with my class at the end of class, but they wouldn't bring their wife or anything. Like they separate work and the personal. And I think a lot of guys, they might go drinking or they might, have another woman or something, but it's like as long as it's separated, kind of like it's okay kind of thing. Let's see. But the Japanese people, they're really polite, and but it's very hard to get personal. But I had a good experience with one of my students. I invited her to something with other Christians. We had like an event, and I think it was really good for her to see how Christians interact with each other, and also his family. And when they saw all of us Christians together, they're just like, wow, these people are real. They really live what they believe, and they like love each other, and they love me, and they're just like, wow, and I think it's really good for them to see that. So she started coming to things with me and my friends, and she liked that. But she was pretty liberal. She used to live in France. So she's Japanese, but she has a kind of stereotype that Christians can be hypocrites. But then when she saw us, she got kind of impressed. She started having a Bible study with me, and like after a few years, she became a Christian, finally. And then she said she just felt free, and it was clear. Because before that's just like gray. Everything's just gray, And so it was really a cool experience. I was so like, wow, so happy, But I think it really helps for them to see the Christians together and experience that they never experienced. And they also experienced, some of them, people we knew experienced our wedding. We had our wedding in Japan, a real Christian wedding. They have like fake Christian weddings sometimes. Like they want to have a Western style wedding with like a Western minister who's not even a Christian, like liberal English teacher. And so they've experienced that, and then they come to our wedding, they're like, wow, that was like really meaningful. So I think it's just really good for them to see the like real Christians together, you know. And
Thank you, Sarah. We actually have to wrap it up, but the main thing I just wanted to get across was just for everybody to kind of hear, you know, from people who know directly, you know, that there is this darkness and this spiritual stronghold over Japan, and there's this huge lack of people. They don't have enough Christians to evangelize themselves, basically. They're considered an unreached people group, and but at the same time, there is hope. God is moving, and you know, some of the things are changing socially, and things are opening up in a sense where it's becoming easier to connect with people. But most people have not even heard of Jesus Christ there. So just so you guys as our church could kind of actually get to hear the actual need, you know, from people who know, you know, from firsthand experience about this kind of thing. So thank you for your attention. We'll go ahead and have a word of prayer and then go into the next service. Father, again, thank you for this time. Thank you for just all the information that was brought forth, and just pray that it would be meaningful to us and that you would open all of our eyes, not just to Japan, but other places in the world, Lord, who are just void of the gospel and the need, and even raise up more people who are interested and willing to go preach the gospel to those places. There's so many different places, so many different other people right now who are trying to go, and I just pray for all of them, Lord, that you would provide and help them to go there, Lord, as they're seeking to take your gospel to these people. And we pray specifically for Japan, that you would continue to open up hearts and let the gospel just have a freedom there, Lord, to go forth, and that it would just not just challenge the hearts and minds of many, Lord, but that it would cause so many, Lord, to actually come to a saving knowledge and actually know their Creator and see that there's much more to life than they even thought. We pray that you bless the rest of our time, the rest of the service, and just work in our lives. In Christ's name, amen. You're dismissed.